Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 74. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thank you guys, Steelers Nation, tuning in this Wednesday morning / afternoon. Dave, what's going on in Dave Bryan's world?
It's all Mike Tomlin's. It's raining in Las Vegas the last couple of days, and it's all Mike Tomlin's fault.
It's always Mike Tomlin's
fault. It has to do with the culture of the Steelers and all like that. I'm pretty sure that this rain 2 days in a row is because of Mike Tomlin's culture in Pittsburgh.
Well, one part of Mike Tomlin's culture in Pittsburgh will not include Mike Munchak, who, as we've talked about and mentioned throughout the week, that Denver was looking to hire him in a lateral move to be the offensive line coach with the Broncos. He did accept that job, so no Mike Munchak anymore in Pittsburgh, obviously one of the best offensive line coaches in football, and now we enter the era of Shaun Sarrett as the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line coach.
Yeah, and once again, and the reason I kind of opened the way that I did there is everything right now seems to be Mike Tomlin's fault. With because Mike Munchak's leaving, it's because kind of the narrative, if you will, being floated out there that Mike Munchak would have never taken that job if he was happy with the way things are going in Pittsburgh, and I just find that. Look, you can be upset and you can say you're upset with Mike Tomlin with the way that things have gone on the field and this team not making the playoffs, this team getting thrown out of the club by the Jacksonville Jaguars, over a year ago. Sure, go that route, but let's look at every case individually, and instead of rushing to the hot sports DJ take of it's Mike Tomlin's fault. Let's look at every situation here. And I think in doing so, and I think that's one thing that I've kind of prided myself on being able to do over the last several number of years, is taking a step back and trying to piece together all the possible scenarios and then coming up with a good, educated, well thought out reason as to why something may have happened. And I really believe that Mike Munchak had every intention of returning to Pittsburgh after not getting that job with the head coaching job with Denver. John Elway and Vic Fangio, probably decided, hey, while we got this guy here and we know that he's got some family over this way, why don't we see if we can't persuade him to become our new offensive line coach? And I think they probably offered him more money than what the Steelers were willing to offer him. I think when you add into the fact that Munchak has a daughter, a grandbaby there in Denver, and I think another daughter. I think L.A. is that another place there. And I think his mom, Munchak's mom, passed away up there in Pennsylvania not too terribly long. So I think maybe his dad is left, and who knows? For all we know, maybe he's going to move his dad down to Denver as well. But when you add all this up, and it's not just probably about Mike Munchak. His wife Marcy probably would like to be around the daughters and the grandbaby more. And for those of you saying, well, why not just fly back and forth? Well, Mike Munchak probably would like to come home to a hot, to a hot cooked meal every once in a while as well too. And I'm not being stereotypical about women cooking men hot meals.
Emails,
right. Because Lord knows if I want a hot cooked meal around my house, I got to do it myself. So, look, it's okay to say that he left because of other reasons not related to culture. Now, out the door, is he thinking, man, at least I don't have to be around that Antonio Brown anymore, or man, that passive aggressive Ben, I'm not going to miss him. Look, anything's possible, but I think the driving force, and Munchak has said as much, is that a lot of this has to, or most of it has to do with family, and I don't see how you cannot believe him.
I mean, I'm not going to create the Munchak family tree, but we all know that family's been a big, reason for him either potentially taking some jobs or turning down some jobs. So it's not like this came out of nowhere at the last second. Oh yeah, my family, I want to be closer to them. He turned down the Arizona second interview last year because he cited, he wanted to be closer to family in Pittsburgh. He turned down the Miami head coaching job because he wanted to cite family. So, this isn't a new thing that just came up. And so I think it's perfectly reasonable to assume that that was the driving force behind it. And that's perfectly reasonable and a fine and, commendable reason to leave, because he's a fiercely loyal guy. That's why he got ran out in Tennessee, because he wouldn't fire his assistants. And they said either you're going to fire your assistants and remain head coach of the Titans, or we're going to fire you if you refuse to do that. So he's always been about loyalty and doing the right thing and things of that nature. And so I really believe it when he says that, it was not a culture-related issue.
Maybe he wanted a new challenge on top of it, too, because let's face it, he's worked with these guys in Pittsburgh since, 2014?
Yep.
Right, and not if any of them go out the door this offseason, it might be one, it might be two. We tend to think that Marcus Gilbert might be the one out the door, and we'll see what happens with a guy like Ramon Foster as well. But what's there? Probably the bulk of the coaching's done. It's a little bit fine-tuning stuff. Maybe he wants a little bit more of a challenge again, and he'll certainly get that in Denver moving forward there. And, look, Denver's a nice place, too. Where would you rather live?
Yeah. Yeah, Denver, it made a lot of sense. Munchak was only going to leave if the fit was perfect, and there was a reason why he wanted the head coaching job. So I totally understand why you leave for the offensive line job. Now, I do hope that the Steelers matched the money that Denver was offering. If they didn't, that's a crime. But, if at some point if the money's equal or very similar, you're going to go where family's at.
Look, I have moved, I have taken jobs to purposely move away from family. So I imagine it's okay to take a job to move closer to family.
Mm-hmm. Well, now we look at his replacement, and his replacement was named within hours of the reporting that Munchak was going to go to Denver. No surprise here in Shaun Sarrett, the guy that we've talked about for really since last year when Munchak started getting some head coaching interest. And I think it's a really good hire. And I know some people who don't know who Shaun Sarrett is, and I know that most people don't know who Shaun Sarrett is. But Steelers have a good coach. They have a guy that has a ton of respect in that room, was Munchak's right-hand man. Probably would have been the offensive line coach had it not been for Munchak becoming available in 2014 after they fired Jack McNeil Jr. So in the short term, definitely not going to be an issue. Losing Munchak sucks, but Sarrett's a good one.
Yeah, in no way, shape, or form am I going to try to say that the loss of Munchak is not big and that just not going to miss a beat here with Shaun Sarrett, but this is a guy that's been around the organization since 2012, before Munchak even arrived. As you said, as you just stated, had he had more experience at the time, maybe he's the offensive line coach, and they don't go out and get somebody like Mike Munchak.
I don't even think it's experience. I just think Munchak was obviously so good that. And he wanted to come back home to PA, that they weren't going to go Sarrett. But had Munchak not been fired, I think it would have been Sarrett regardless of experience.
All right, and then, moving forward here, once again, it's not like these guys are going to these offensive linemen are going to magically forget how to do everything. They're not going to forget the things that they've been taught. Now, is there constantly some fine tuning, another set of eyes, so to speak? Well, you would hope now that Shaun Sarrett being around Mike Munchak as long as he's been, they watch a lot of tape together, and he's picked up on a lot of those things. It's almost, it's the Mike Munchak coaching tree, if you will, at this point. So, what better person to have in there than maybe Sarrett? And then once again, like I stated, your offensive line in 2019 is probably not going, from top to bottom of the depth chart, of course, barring injuries, is going to look quite a bit a lot alike the one that you just had the last couple of years. And like I said, Gilbert might be gone, but you didn't have him at all, nearly at all this past season. We'll see what happens with Ramon Foster. And yeah, you might have another new guy in there at the bottom end of the depth chart. But put it to this way. If that's the worst thing that happens to the Steelers this offseason is losing Mike Munchak, I think they might be in pretty decent shape.
Yeah, in terms of new faces starting, there won't be any of that. So even if you lose, you cut Gilbert or you Foster walks, you're going to have guys that were in-house who were coached by Munchak, B.J. Finney, Matt Filo, Will McCoy stepping in. So there won't be a new guy from outside the organization in that kind of role. Two quick stories on Sarrett. He's basically been an offensive line coach before in Pittsburgh. The story went in 2013. They hired Jack McNeil Jr., who was arguably the worst hire in Mike Tomlin's history. And by the second half of the year, the line's doing a terrible job. It's just not working out. They know they're moving on from Jack McNeil Jr. So Sarrett, according to reports, basically ran that room the back half of the year in 2013, and the line saw a big improvement in terms of the sack numbers and just overall play. So, that was one reason why I think Sarrett would have been a strong candidate had Munchak not been available, because he was essentially functioning as the offensive line coach back in that second half of the year in 2013.
And
the other story.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, the other story is just kind of a small anecdote. I think in 2017, there's something called the Cool Clinic, which is a big offensive line junkie clinic. A lot of O-line coaches come in and teach, and they just talk ball basically for a couple days. I think it's in Dayton, Ohio. Munchak was asked to attend, and so he did, and he gave a great presentation, but he brought Sarrett with him as kind of his right-hand man who kind of helped out with the presentation and the clinic. So just to kind of paint the picture of how close that relationship is between Munchak and Sarrett. It's in the off season. You have no obligation to bring Sarrett, but they've just always kind of together. So the teaching, the mentor, that Munchak was able to impart on Sarrett, I think was really unique, and that's why I think this team's going to be in good shape even without Mike Munchak.
And another thing that I want to point out too is, look at that dink and dunk passing game last year, and look how quickly now Roethlisberger is getting rid of the football. I'm not saying that they would have had more sacks had been, held on to the football more, but it certainly does help your sack totals when you're a quarterback, when most of his passes are 5 yards or less past the line of scrimmage, and he's getting the football out in 2.3 seconds or less. Mm-hmm. If you keep doing that, you could probably, Alex, you could probably coach that offensive line from a pass protection aspect. Now, make no mistake about it, though. On top of it, the run blocking for this offensive line the last couple of years has not been fantastic. As much as I praised Alejandro Villanueva in the past with his development as pass blocking, he's not great out in space. He's not, and a lot of it has to do with his size too. He's not a fantastic run blocker. Pouncey, is not the run blocker he once was. Foster to me is a better pass protector than he is a run blocker. Let's put that into perspective as well too. This team, from a successful run standpoint, even dating back last year to when they had Le'Veon Bell, could have stood to be better on run blocking.
Yeah, no, there's certainly improvements to make, and so it's not a finished product, and you're never satisfied with the results. My other concern, though, with losing Munchak, aside from losing Mike Munchak and all that he brings, is that I think one reason why this offensive line was so good was because there was trust in Sarrett, and you were able to maximize reps during practice, because what often happened, at least in training camp, and I assume it happened during the regular season as well, is that they would split the groups into two. So tackles would go in one group, and interior linemen, guards, and centers would be in another group. Munchak would take usually the tackles. Sarrett would take the interior guys. So you're getting double the reps. So it's not, one coach having to coach 15 guys. You're basically having one coach for 6-7 guys, for one group, tackles or interior guys. And so I think that was one big reason why you saw the line play so well, because they probably doubled the reps of other groups, because you just had more opportunity with the group split up. So we'll see if they hire an assistant. Obviously, he would like to. I know Alan Fanika's name has been mentioned as serving as intern before in the past in camp and OTAs. But you got to find someone that you can trust to basically work with the group solo the way that Sarrett did, and that's easier said than done. So if they can't do that, I think you will be hurt by the lack of practice reps that you had before, but we'll see what happens with that group.
And Alan Faneca would be an interesting add as well, too. Obviously, he's been kind of interning, if you will, to see if he. I mean, it would be a logical thing. I mean, what better? I mean, I guess if you're going to lose Mike Munchak, what better to have filling in behind him a guy like Sarrett who worked under Mike Munchak, and then a guy like Alan Faneca who we hope by the end of the next couple weeks will be on his way to Canton, Ohio as well.
Yeah, to replace one Hall of Famer with another Hall of Famer. Because that's my other concern is that obviously Sarrett in-house to the guys that have been around him, they trust, they respect him. I have no issues there. I think when you have new guys that eventually will come in though, and Sarrett doesn't have the resume of Mike Munchak, and they weren't around for the Munchak-Sarrett relationship. I think one reason of many of why Munchak was so successful because guys bought into his system because he's a Hall of Fame lineman, and so he knows what he's talking about. That does have an impact. Doesn't mean that it's a guarantee that you're going to be a great coach because you're a great player, but I think it certainly helped players buy in. So for a new guy coming in who doesn't know who the heck Shaun Sarrett is, wasn't coached by Mike Munchak, you might have a bit of an impact there negatively. But to bring Faneca in, I think would be a good move. But again, do you trust him to basically run a practice with a group of guys, and that's not something everybody can do right off the bat.
All right, we done talking about Munchak now?
Unfortunately, it hurt though. It definitely hurt because he's done such a fantastic job, and it's just I wish him well. I wish him a lot of success.
Yeah, I think he'll do good. Now we'll sit and watch. I wrote about this yesterday or the day before. Now we'll sit and watch and see if any Steelers offensive linemen follow him over there, and as stated, Ramon Foster. We'll see what happens with Ramon Foster. My gut is trying to tell me that either A, I'm hungry, or B, that Ramon Foster will end up re-signing with the Steelers. I mean, you just have to think as long as he's been in Pittsburgh with that line and probably, and he said recently in that radio interview in Nashville that he thinks he has 2 or 3 years left. I think maybe he's got 2 years at most left. Why not try to end it right where you finished it? Now, unless somebody comes out and knocks his socks off with an extra $1 million or $2 million, which is feasible. I mean, it is feasible the way. What a great time for Foster to pick to play in all 16 games, every snap, and doing so after missing all of training camp and all of the preseason with a knee injury that we thought initially when it happened, oh no, there he goes for the season. Mm-hmm. Well, he played through that. He played, looked like the same old Ramon Foster to me, for the most part throughout the season there. My gut tells me he'll re-sign, that he's playing hard to get now. You have to remember that he just turned 33 just recently, something like that. Yeah. And right now he's one of the top 20 oldest offensive linemen in the league. So, people are going to look at that and going to kind of be careful with giving him money. Now that Mike Munchak is in Denver, that would obviously be a logical landing spot for him. But, if you do a little research around, they have a left guard over there in Ronald Leary that's missed a lot of time due to injury since he signed with the Broncos, and he's got a huge, I think he's set to make something like $7 or $8 million in 2019, and there's very little dead money associated with him. However, if the Broncos don't cut Ronald Leary by the time the new league year rolls around and free agency starts, you have to really think that they're not going to be in the market for a left guard. So that would be one spot out for Foster right there. Now, I haven't taken a deep look at what's going on in Tennessee. Obviously, it would Foster, if he were to leave Pittsburgh, you would think maybe he wants to go back home, back where he's from near Tennessee. So I suppose Tennessee would be an option. Outside of that, it starts getting thin real quick as far as him be able to go probably where he can A, get money, and B, maybe compete for a championship in the final couple of years as well too. So that kind of has me leaning toward Foster returning. And the other name outside of Gilbert, which if you cut Gilbert, you can't be choosy about where Gilbert lands. And I think of all of them, Gilbert might have the best shot at landing in Denver with Munchak if the Steelers cut him loose. But people will say, well, what about B.J. Finney? And yeah, that's feasible. The whole thing with Finney is what kind of restricted tender are you going to give him? I know you and I kind of already touched on that maybe a week or 2 weeks ago. I know since the season ended when we talked about the restricted free agents. Are the Steelers going to give Finney a right of first refusal, low tender of around $2 million, or are they going to bump it up to over $3 million there with a second round tender? We tend to value our own more than others. I'm guilty of that as much as anybody. If I really think someone is a fit with the Steelers, I tend to value them a little bit more than I would other players outside the organization. So that's why I don't think I don't think anybody should be surprised if the Steelers just merely give fit. They're going to tender him. We know they're going to restricted tender him, but don't be surprised if it's just a right of first refusal tender and go from there. And at that point, would a team such as maybe the Broncos be interested in trying to sign Finney to an offer sheet and sign him away? And would the Steelers be willing to match it? I tell you, if you look back over time here, it's not often many teams want to fool with tendered restricted free agents just because of the process involved, because of the 5 or 7 day match period or whatever it is. And generally teams will, if they really want to keep the player, they end up matching the contract. So it ends up being wasted time there right at the start of the free agent signing period on top of it. So, logic tells you and history tells you that the Steelers are probably going to retain B.J. Finney regardless of the type tender that they put on him. So overall, as I sit here right now in the middle of January, I don't think people should be too scared about losing anyone other than maybe Marcus Gilbert, this offseason.
I'm still, 50-50 on where Foster's going to go. I think he certainly is going to look to go somewhere else and see if he can get more money. Then Pittsburgh may kind of be that fallback option that's definitely going to always be there. Finney, I don't expect is going to get a tender or an offer sheet from another team. I think he'll get, the second round or the original round is going to be, based on the odds of Foster returning. If you think you're going to get Foster back, maybe put the original round. If you know you're going to lose Foster, then I think you definitely put the second round just to protect yourself. But yeah, I don't think Finney's going to go anywhere.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the rest of the exclusive rights free agents. In fact, Zach Banner's already signed before he hit being an exclusive rights free agent. So that's done. Matt Filer's going to be an exclusive rights free agent. It wouldn't be surprising to hear him signing another 1-year deal for the minimum here pretty soon. Really, the only guys they're going to lose at this point, and that they might not tender Joseph Cheek, who spent the year on IR, but that's not a big loss there. I mean, for the most part, it looks like most of this offensive line's coming back. Now, with that said, are they going to? Should we expect them to draft a guard or a center/guard at some point here? I wouldn't think so, but I don't think you could completely rule it out late in the draft either.
Maybe, yeah, late in the draft, you're looking at value. It's gonna maybe if you lose Foster and the combination of a good talent, being there, you want to restock the shelf. I'm okay with that. I think it's a good time though to segue into a little bit of Steelers news that came across the wire. Yesterday, I think on Tuesday, Steelers signed 3 exclusive rights free agents. Zach Banner, who already knew about, Jordan Dangerfield, and long snapper Cameron Kennedy. So 3 really no-brainers there.
Right, absolutely. Those 3 were scheduled to become exclusive rights free agents at the start of March there. Technically, and it's not going to show up. These kind of signings don't show up on the NFL transaction wire, because of the fact that they're actually signing 1-year extensions prior to becoming exclusive rights free agents. I mean, these are guys that know that they're exclusive rights free agents, and it's the same way with any exclusive rights free agents. They must accept any tender, minimum tender that they get from a team. They can only negotiate with the team that tenders them, and that's why they're called exclusive rights free agents. I don't know why we just don't call them exclusive rights, because there's nothing right. free about free agent when it comes to those guys and the Steelers. And we already covered a lot of those, the long list of exclusive free rights free agents here. The ones that are kind of outstanding right now. What did I write? Filer and Mike Hilton. You can go ahead. Those guys. Well, they might have already signed 1-year extensions by now. The other ones that we'll have to watch: Malik Golden, Jake McGee, Keith Kelsey, and Joseph Cheek. All of those guys spent the year on reserve injured list. So maybe the Steelers are just waiting to see how their rehab is coming. There's obviously no rush. I mean, even if you didn't give these guys exclusive rights, for tenders, how many of them are going to end up elsewhere? So Jake McGee, I'd like to see him back, giving it one more shot. But I mean, an Achilles injury is tough to come over. I think Keith Kelsey at this point, I think the ship has sailed. I think Joseph Cheek, the ship has sailed, and Malik Golden. I mean, he's made some plays, but I mean, coming off that knee injury, he's gonna be on the shelf for a little while anyway. So maybe a guy like Malik Golden is a guy that you don't tender. And maybe at some point, he becomes a practice squad guy for you or something next season, because he suffered his knee injury during I think preseason there. That's usually at least a year out kind of thing. So maybe after Filer and Hilton are done, maybe that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was the last preseason game that Golden got hurt against Carolina. Marcus Allen ran into him. So, but yeah, just some minor moves there. We'll keep you posted on if any others do end up signing. Dave, where do you want to go from here? You want to go to James Harrison? Or you want to talk a little draft?
Yeah, why don't we talk a little bit about James Harrison? Him and Ryan Clark are going to probably be the two popular guys on the talk show circuit here. And James Harrison was back at it again. Not only was he on Undisputed with Bayless and Shannon Sharp, and man, I cannot stand either one of those two guys. I also can't stand Stephen A. Smith either. That one, all those guys get on my nerves. And then later he was on with talking about James Harrison. He was on with Colin Cowherd as well. So why don't you recap the bulk of kind of what Harrison said on Undisputed, and I'll fill in whatever holes you missed.
Yeah, those shows are not on my DVR. I'll say that much. I didn't listen really to the first half of the Undisputed. I listened to the back half. Basically, there were two, I guess, big components of what Harrison said. One, obviously, was about Antonio Brown, the situation there, and then the other was kind of the Mike Tomlin, Keith Butler dynamic. Starting with Brown, though, he was on Colin Cowherd and basically just said that he doesn't think Brown and Ben are the real issue, but there's an obvious rift between Brown and the organization, and it's probably not going to be fixed. He told Colin Cowherd, quote, "I think it's come to a point where I don't believe things can be ironed out, so to speak. I feel like it's time that maybe he gets a fresh start somewhere else where he can build a different rapport, relationship with new coaches, new teammates, and start from there. I think he just wants to get the same respect and say as he feels other players get that he doesn't get." But added, when asked something Brown hasn't told him directly, he just says on the vibe. So he hasn't talked to Brown personally, but just says kind of the vibe is that maybe he doesn't feel as respected. And as I mentioned last week, I think doesn't have a voice in that locker room. So that's his feeling there. So again, another Steeler, another professional or former professional athlete thinking AB is going to get traded, and that seems to be the prevailing wisdom right now.
And what did Harrison have to say about Mike Tomlin?
I don't have the direct quote here, but basically, had his criticisms of Mike Tomlin, which he's been no stranger in sharing before. And, the ongoing discussion, I know we've talked about a lot in the comment section on Steelers Depot, is what is Tomlin's role in the defense and how does that Tomlin-Butler dynamic work? And from Harrison's point of view, he thinks that that Tomlin has his hands in a lot of the pots defensively, and that Butler hasn't had the freedom that he thinks Butler deserves to be a defensive coordinator. So I know that stuff's been rumored. It's been talked about a lot. We could have a whole hour discussion about it. I was having an hour discussion on Twitter about it yesterday, but basically saying that Tomlin is having a big role in that defense, which is really no shock.
Right. I mean, we expect him to have his hands all over the defense, but I think some are trying to, I see the arguments that people are having about who's calling the plays on a down-by-down situation. That's not Tomlin. I don't think.
Look like it.
I don't think.
I mean, he's calling some plays because it's been, the weird thing is that the traditional media has hinted at some of this stuff, but they won't come out and say it, and you're confused of why that is. I mean,
because they don't know.
I don't know. I can't say why they're doing it or they're not doing it. I mean, all I know is that Butler is the man that has the play call sheet all the time. And yes, I'm sure sometimes Tomlin has an influence and will call some plays and it becomes more involved in critical situations. But because of that, because Butler has the play call sheet and Tomlin does not, if you're the play caller, you're holding that sheet. I don't care if you're the head coach or not. You're not going to do it off of total memory. So that tells me that Butler has some sort of influence and certainly has some significant role in play calling on game day.
It would be interesting to see. I don't know why they don't just come out and ask these and keep needling Tomlin for these answers during these press conferences. We're not going to hear from Tomlin again until the March meetings, right?
Probably.
Down in, I forget, well, I don't know if they're in Florida or not this year, but and even then, you don't at the coach's breakfast and all like that. He needs to be needled on these things, and Keith Butler as well too. We're not going to hear from Keith Butler until the draft. Mm-hmm. We'll hear from Kevin Colbert maybe once or twice here coming up, with the combine being one of those times and maybe the meetings, being the next time there. But, why don't you get these questions asked, during the season at all? And I'm with you. I mean, look, yeah, there might get in a situation where, we've seen some of these mic'd up segments and all like that before we go, where coaches are saying, send them, but is he given the exact play call? I mean, surely Mike Tomlin does not have the entire play sheet and situational sheet memorized in his head. If he does, kudos on him. But
I don't think he does.
I don't think that's the case.
And I'm open to the idea that Tomlin is having a bigger role. I've said that Tomlin has had a clearly growing influence on this defense, and his stamps on this defense more and more, I think, in part because Butler hasn't done a good enough job, so Tomlin's started to take over there. And I wrote the article the other day, I think Monday, that, is Butler really getting demoted to outside linebackers coach this year, and could this be a year where Tomlin really takes over? I think that's totally possible. And I'm going to try to investigate this stuff because obviously, we haven't gotten really a clear and straight answer from the media, and there's a lot of hinting and implication, but no one's really come out and said it, so it's created some confusion there. But I'm just going by what I see on game day. I know the Butler is holding a play sheet, and so he's got a role.
All right, and I mean it's obvious at this point that Mike Tomlin's wagon is tied. Firm, whatever you want to call Keith Butler, water boy or whatever, Tomlin's tied to it right now. Mm-hmm. And as we've said several times, this defense is going to be, to me, how this defense improves during the offseason 2019 is going to decide whether or not this team is in the playoffs and makes a deep playoff run. I mean, and we haven't even regardless of what happens offensively with them losing AB. Obviously, if you do lose AB and you don't have Le'Veon Bell back, which it's looking like both those things are have a good chance to happen, it's hard to expect that you're going to average 28, 29 points a game. Especially when your defense does not set up your offense on the other side of the field there. So your defense, and make no mistake about it, the defense for a period of 6, 7, 8 games, half the season held up their end of the bargain. But when they weren't holding up their end of the bargain, oftentimes it was in games where they had done well most of the games, but not at end of games. And maybe that's the driving force here. Maybe they think that there's less to iron out than we do on the outside. And I mean, we'll see. I tell you what, complaining about it right now of saying they should fire Tomlin or they should fire Keith Butler, you're just wasting breath right now.
Well, I wasted some breath right after the season when I thought Butler should go, but point taken. What did you think about Harrison's comments on AB? Do you have any thoughts there? I know Brown has said that he's going to Brown said he's going to talk to, he's going to share his side of the story, I guess, soon. I don't know when that's going to be, but that's, I think, the most recent update from him.
Here's the thing about Harrison. I don't think he's far enough removed from the game and his own situation and his friendships that he has there. I don't think Harrison is as free to talk about things as, say, a Ryan Clark is. Harrison likes this extra attention, I think. I think he likes having a job to go to. I don't think he's very good at doing what he's doing. When I think of great NFL former NFL player analysts, I don't think of James Harrison. So thus I think he's saying some things to kind of pacify both sides. Look, I mean, he reportedly had a great relationship with Ben when the two were in when the two together. I think he has a good relationship with AB. And I also think that he knows that certain things go on in that locker room that there is some favoritism going on in there. And I don't think that'll surprise anybody that, maybe Ben's allowed to be 5 minutes late to a meeting. Maybe AB is allowed to be 7 minutes late to a meeting, and those kind of things. And that kind of culture that people kind of talk to, I think it does tend to fracture things at some point. Now, Harrison went as far as to, I think, ask, well, what about AB in a new environment such like San Francisco? And Harrison went on to say, well, as long as he knows what the rules are and they're the same rules for everybody right from the get-go, I don't think there'll be a problem. Do you really think that after the first 4 weeks of the season, AB's going to be on time for meetings, say in San Francisco?
Yeah. Well, whatever he did in Pittsburgh.
I mean, that's a question, right?
I mean, whatever he did in Pittsburgh, I don't think his habits are really going to change. So whatever he did there, he's going to do in a new place.
I mean, does Tomlin need to just wipe it all off the board right now and say, look, I made a mistake. I've let some players do this and some players do that. And Tomlin's admitted in the past that not all players get. Does that? How much does that need? Do you think accountability 100% in a locker room? Every rule goes for every player. How much do you think that makes a difference in now? Obviously, when you're winning, probably not as much. But what about when you're losing?
Well, I think it's an impossible standard to say that everyone's going to get treated the exact same way, regardless of status. Because let's say you're a rookie. If you're an undrafted rookie and you make a mistake on the field or something off the field, you have a less margin of error than a guy on the field. You're not cutting, it's just reality. You're not cutting a star receiver or your star quarterback for making the same mistakes that some fourth stringer makes. It's just, you can't create that standard because you're never going to be able to hold yourself to it. Now, there are, with rules and stuff like that, maybe there are things that have to get worked out, but I think this idea that everyone's going to be treated the same with the same exact outcome and the same exact thing every single time, is just, you're setting yourself up for failure.
All right. Well, I mean, how can you? I mean, we hear Fangio talk about death by inches and all like that. About being late for. How do you ensure that all your players show up at the meeting at all times?
If I was a head coach, Steve, I'd have a fantastic answer for you. But I'm glad I don't have to worry about that stuff right now. But I promise you, while I understand Vic Fangio's point, he's going to treat Von Miller differently than he's going to treat the undrafted rookie coming in. You're going to treat all the guys with respect and as much fairness as possible. I think Tomlin's done a good job of that. I've had players tell me that Tomlin treats everybody the same way, has the same level of respect for every guy, regardless superstar or a tryout guy. But in terms of some of the rules and the punishments and things like that, there is going to be a different standard, and that is, to me, unavoidable, regardless if you're in Pittsburgh, even New England, or any other city that has a football team. It's just you can't do it.
I mean, if Ben Roethlisberger is 5 minutes late consistently for a meeting, you're not going to, at the end of the week, say, you know what, Ben, you broke the rules. I'm going to have to. You're going to be inactive. I mean,
right.
Obviously you can't do that. You can't.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
But
and during that interview, Shannon Sharp said that's an impossible standard that no one can work to.
Well, he needs to do a better job than what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair.
In
Sure.
that aspect of trying to hold everybody accountable, and I think that's a big thing. I think that, and look, I'm not breaking. It's not a new revelation I just came up with there, you know. But I think Tomlin does need to look at take a long hard look about how he does treat players on the team. And look, I mean, some people that have been there long enough are going to say, oh, well, I remember when you used to do this. Is that really the way you it's going to be tough to have I don't know if I want to call it a culture change, but just a way of doing, the way you handle day-to-day operations, I guess.
Sure, I'm sure there's definite improvement that has to be made by the results and the situation they find themselves in now. Clearly, that signals a change and a different approach of some degree. But I think it's also important to point out, I know the thought isn't lost on you, Dave, that there has been clear accountability before in Pittsburgh. Whether that's Martavis Bryant getting suspended for a game for his social media flare-up in 2017, or AB getting benched for that Bengals game last year. I think we lose that fact too quickly, is that a lot of coaches would have let Brown play in that game because it was such a pivotal game. You had to have that victory to have a chance to make the playoffs. A lot of coaches would have just said, you know what, just play because we need you. We can't lose this game. But Tomlin made I'm sure, difficult decision. Maybe for him it was an easy decision, but a difficult and service decision to sit AB down and hurt your chances of winning. And he did that to help save the locker room in the sense of all the reports that had Brown played that game. You probably would have lost the rest of that locker room. You would have lost respect from the rest of your teammates and your players. So let's not lose sight. There has been accountability in the system. I think we forget about that fact.
All right. Bruce Arians also was on the Adam Schefter podcast yesterday and called Antonio Brown too much and a long pause diva. Now, obviously, there's no love lost between Arians and AB. In fact, this past summer, AB took a kind of a shot at not only Bruce Arians but Mike Tomlin as well. Saying because of AB considering him more of a special teams player and a guy that not very smart and couldn't read hots, and Mike Tomlin with his 2 dogs, 1 bone back. 2010 season, 2011, along those lines. But I mean, Arians was quick to, I think, kind of, say that Brown's a good player and all that nobody works harder than them. That he's just, too much diva at this point. So I found that kind of entertaining and wrote that up as well. And now, really, the question becomes, and we'll see. I mean, the $100,000 question over the next 8 weeks is will the Steelers trade Antonio Brown somewhere? And people continue to ask what we think will happen and what they can get. I will just say this one last time for this week. I can't see a team giving up like the San Francisco 49ers giving up the number 2 overall pick just for Antonio Brown. Now, would they consider trading first round picks with the Steelers for Antonio Brown? Is that feasible? Is that worth doing right there? You would think the 49ers at least are going to want to have to come out of this with still having a first round pick. So is moving down 18 spots, for Antonio Brown worth it?
That's possible. It's a lot more likely. I don't know. It's just idle speculation. All I know is that he's not going to go to Tampa with Bruce Arians.
Right.
Off the list. That's about it.
And he's not going to go to Tampa. He's not going to go to Cincinnati. He's not going to go to Cleveland. He's not going to go to Baltimore. You're not going to trade him to New England. Who else are you not going to trade him to? I know people throwing Denver out there. I just don't see Fangio trading for him.
Okay. I mean, preferably you trade him to an NFC team. Obviously, that's where you start, so you don't have to compete against them as often.
Right, but I don't think you're going to trade him to the Los Angeles Chargers. You start whittling these down. I think there's a possibility you trade them to the Raiders. I don't think you can rule that out. I
imagine if you do market him, there will be about 10 teams around the league that have legitimate interest in him.
And that's what I wrote in my post, my Bruce Arians post. And I think once you start whittling this thing down of teams that for one reason or another, A, just don't want the diva headache, B, the Steelers just are not going to trade him to him for a team, let's say, in a division. And, maybe C, for other reasons outside, cap or already have people in place, that they need, or not having to draft capital or along those lines. I think you can get yourself down to about 10 teams.
But that's still a solid market. I mean, that's going to drive up the price.
Well, sure. I mean, sure. It only takes one, right?
Yeah, but if you have 10 teams going after each other, I mean, that's 10 teams. Rarely do you have 10 teams interested in trading for one single player, at least sincere, serious interest.
Right, and then how many of those teams have a pick in the top 10 overall draft picks? As well. But back to my question: is it worth? And San Francisco could use a wide receiver. Make no mistake about it. Is it worth trading a number 2 overall pick for the Steelers' 20th overall and Antonio Brown?
If you felt okay with AB off the stuff, and that's obviously a big if, I would do it. Again, I think teams hold their top draft picks in regard too much because you're San Francisco and you have a quarterback. If you're a top 5 overall team, you need a quarterback. You're not giving that pick up at all because you going after a quarterback. But because San Francisco has Garoppolo, who's going to be healthy coming off of the torn ACL, I'd be more interested in that move. I don't expect AB to get traded for a top 10 pick regardless of quarterback situation. But I think you could go with a mid to low 1 and then get something else.
Yeah, we'll see for sure.
And that's really where it is. We'll see. I've run out of stuff to talk about with AB because he's got to talk to the team. He's not talking to the team. If he doesn't talk to the team, he's going to get traded. That's kind of the process.
And as soon as he has this quote-unquote whatever interview that he's talking about on Instagram, we'll make sure we recap that for everybody. Speaking of draft picks and all like that, you recently broke down Josh Allen out of Kentucky. So once I think I said a couple of podcasts ago, I think that I am the only player that Josh Allen did not sack last year.
Yeah, it's too bad the Steelers don't pick in the top 5 because that's likely where Josh Allen's going to go. Outside linebacker from Kentucky, one of the top pass rushers in this year's class. Just really showed a great improvement from junior to senior year, going from 7 sacks his junior year to 17 his senior year. I think his hand use really developed and his ability to kind of finish plays and win the edge more consistently was a big reason for that. But he's just a big guy, 2'5", 260. 6'5", I say 2'5", 6'5", 260. With a great get off, he has better bend than say a Bud Dupree. He played in a 3-4. He was comfortable moving into coverage and playing off ball and stunting and really kind of playing in an NFL looking kind of defense. Want to see him get a little bit stronger. He can play a little too high because he is 6'5". But a great guy off the field by all accounts, productive on the field at a high level, showed improvement. A senior, he's more refined than some other guys. I don't think he's the next Bud Dupree. I think he's a really good pass rusher, and it's probably going to be top 5, no worse than a top 10 pick.
I've watched a lot of his sacks. In fact, you probably saw that list that I had in the draft there. I don't know how many of those that you watched, but fairly, really impressive group of sacks, and I think I have most of them going back to his complete college career there. But how is he against the run?
I think he's pretty disciplined. I think he can set the edge. He has that length, which he's able to use to kind of, create some space and get vision in the run game. I think his hand use again improved, which helped him disengage from blockers his junior to senior year. I do want to see him be a little stronger at the point of attack. I think there are maybe some occasional issues against tackles and some of these base blocks that can kind of wash him a little bit. Maybe play with better pad level. I think he's fighting his pad level at 6'5" all the time. But I don't think it's terrible. It might not be his greatest strength. It is not his greatest strength, but I think he's a pretty well-rounded player.
All right, I got kind of an off-the-cuff tweet the other day. I don't even know if this chap even listens to the podcast, but he wanted me to tell him what his thoughts was great. Another Kentucky edge rusher. He wanted to know what's the difference between Josh Allen and Bud Dupree?
Bend. Allen can bend the corner and has better hip and ankle flexibility than Dupree. That's always been Dupree's biggest issue. So I know, and I saw it in the comments already on that Allen post, there was a lot of, the next Dupree. I don't consider these guys the same. I think that bend is a big difference.
To me, he comes out as just a better overall pass rusher with a plan, too.
Yeah, I think he's been a smarter pass rusher than Dupree's been.
I mean, we see him with a two-hand swipe,
Mm-hmm.
We see him use his hand, to me, And I'm trying to think back to Dupree wasn't a refined pass rusher coming out of college.
No, I mean, I really don't think he's become refined until I thought this year was his first year he really started to kind of become a more refined pass rusher.
And look, that's not saying too terribly much though.
Yeah, well, I think it was better this year, but you can see a guy that's well into his NFL career versus a guy just coming out.
To me, and when I looked, of course, I'm looking mostly at highlights so far with Josh Allen. Is there was a plan? I mean, I like the kind of the stutter step and the head fakes that he uses. I think I saw a spin or two in there. I don't think. How many rips did you see? You see rips?
When he speed rushes the edge, he'll do that rip move that James Harrison did, where he's able to rip under the guys. He just has to make sure he's knocking the tackles hands down to make that rip more successful.
Now we have also I have seen this as well too. He will get if he loses if he doesn't win that race to the edge, he will get stuck.
Yep, agree.
And he needs to learn how to better counter off of that. And that's not, to me, that can kind of be worked on. I want to see that a guy, and that's why people say, well, why do you always scout with highlights first? Well, I want to see what he can do. I want to see what a player can do first. I want to see everything that he knows, all the positives first. Because if you know what a player can do, at least you can work from there, and then you work on the things that he can't do. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I really like Josh Allen, and the bad thing about this time of year, Alex, is anytime we write something about a player, it's he won't be there.
Yeah, well, to be fair, in Josh Allen's case, I don't really expect him to be at pick 20.
Right, but I mean, let's not rule out the Steelers trading,
Sure.
This year more so than maybe ever because of the situation with AB. The biggest thing is and for those of you diehards that listen to every podcast and read almost everything on the site, first of all, thank you for that. Thank you. We don't say that enough. Second, man, don't let your first comment be he won't be there.
Yeah,
the whole best thing about this process is, in my opinion, is we get to learn about so many new players that not only going to land in Pittsburgh, if you're obviously going to land in Pittsburgh, but others around the league too. And it's part of becoming better evaluators as well too, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So don't let just read it and remark positively or negatively about the player. Maybe there's something that you like that was missed in the evaluation. Maybe there was something we missed in the evaluation. All of that's possible, but I mean, to me, you're not helping the conversation. And I'll say this 20 more times during the off season. You're not doing the conversation any good, in my opinion, if you just merely say he won't be there.
Right. No, I agree. Look at the player, because you might play against him. You might be on your team 5 years from now. You never know what's going to happen.
All right, I'll get off the soapbox there. Speaking of Bud Dupree, I sat back and thought a little bit more about his situation yesterday.
We have some disagreements here, Dave.
Lord! Forgive that. You're supposed to go with everything that I tell you, Alex. Didn't you? You signed.
I didn't get the paycheck this week.
How you cannot disagree with me? That's not allowed. That's the sole reason why you're on this podcast now. It's because of that. Look, in a nutshell, I don't think people should, I don't think there's any reason to believe that Steelers are going to part ways with Bud Dupree in the next 8 weeks. I just don't think that's going to happen. And you hit on this a little bit yourself. He made some small improvements, which, last season. But even his small improvements, and I think I put this in the post as well too, he's right at his ceiling. We've seen Bud Dupree's ceiling, in my opinion. I think you'd probably at least agree with that end of it. The other end of it is too, there's nothing but question marks behind T.J. Watt and Bud Dupree at this point. Sure, you have a Denier who you hope there's something there. Let's be quite honest with each other. He only played 9 defensive snaps last year. What we saw of Adeniyi was what you saw out of him at training camp and what we saw out of him collectively during the preseason. We may or may not see Anthony Chickillo back in 2019. You would tend to think that he has a good chance of returning on some sort of deal as a backup, but that's all he is. Keon Adams, we have yet to see Keon Adams play a defensive snap in a meaningful football game since he was drafted in the 7th round of the 2017 NFL draft. And that's it. So as we sit here in mid-January with about 8 weeks exactly to go to the start of the new league year, I will be pretty damn surprised if the Steelers have turned Bud Dupree loose. So
Wow.
give me your disagreement there.
And
look, I'm not saying our disagreement here can't be that what we think the Steelers should do.
Okay. I mean, I have 9 million reasons for why that's a bad idea. And
you're not going to get an argument. I've already said it's a bad idea.
Well, even from the team standpoint, 9 million reasons not to. And just because you don't have anything behind him doesn't mean that you put money into a player that doesn't deserve that contract or deserve that money. I mean, that's so many logical fallacies. That's like me putting money into the McLumina because I say, well, I don't have another car. I can go get another car. There's not a car in my garage right now, but I can go get another car. And by the way, McLumina is getting new headlights soon, so this isn't the perfect analogy. But no, you can go find someone else. Forget about who else you have. Look at the player as themselves and say, did Bud Dupree earn this $9 million he's owed in 2019? The answer is no. It has to be no. Whoever says yes to that is insane. Lock him up. So if the answer to that is no, you figure out the rest later. You can't make those decisions based off of all the things around him. We've talked about that before, Dave. You can't look at the other situations, the other factors. You have to look at the player himself. And Dupree has not earned that contract.
All right, it's not that. That's not the point, though.
That's your point. Your point was there's no depth behind Dupree, so you must keep Dupree at that price.
I'm not saying you must. I'm saying that's the way they're going to look at this, and that this is what the end result's going to be.
Why do you think they're going to look at it that way?
I just think that's the way they're going to look at it this way.
That's not an answer. That's why we disagree.
So you're what's going to happen with him? You think he's going to get cut, right?
Yeah. I mean, one, I know we agree on this, but A, he should. But B, yes, I think he will get released.
Here's the other thing on top of it there is free agency starts after the first of the new league year, and day one is when that contract guarantees. You're not guaranteed to get player X out there that you think.
I know.
Now here's the thing: if it didn't guarantee until 5 or 6 days into the new league year or whatever, then you can say, all right, we got this guy out Bud goes, But you don't have that.
That's just a bad way to look at it. You can't make your decisions based off of who else you might get. You got to look at the guy himself, and you figure out the rest later.
All right. Well, I think
you'll get somebody. I mean, you'll get somebody.
I think I think a lot of people are gonna be upset, and they better not be upset at me when March 13th or whatever rolls around. And look, you're not gonna get it. No tears are gonna be shed on my part if they cut bait with him.
Sure.
I mean,
the only reason why you keep Dupree is if you felt he played up to that $9 million. If you did, God bless you. I don't see it happening, but. It's not because you only have Adeniyi and Keon Adams behind him. That's just not a good enough reason.
Look, neither one of us thought they were going to give him deep down inside. If we were to put our money on it, neither one of us thought they were going to even pick up his fifth-year option, or should have.
I thought it was possible, though. I thought it was a lot more possible they'd pick it up than them keeping him now.
What they should have done is they should have let him play it out, and then they could, then he would have had even more pressure on him, and then at worst, right now, you could slap him with the transition tag or something.
No, I mean, the fifth-year option had no downside though. There was no guarantee at the time. Now there's a guarantee. Now there's a clear consequence.
Well, the downside is that. You're now faced with the prospects of cutting a former first-round draft pick with no compensation whatsoever.
Sure. But at the time, you were hoping that the light would come on for 2018, and he did improve. And I don't think he's at his ceiling yet. I'll disagree slightly. I think he can get a little better. I think the health has been a big reason why he hasn't taken the steps that he should. He had the elbow arm injury 2017. He had a torn pec for the back half of 2018. So I'll give him credit. He's a tough guy. He's played through a ton of injuries. I think he can get better if he ever stays healthy, but unfortunately, the injury bug has followed him time and time again, and it's difficult to trust him staying healthy over a 16-game season.
I hope the hell I'm wrong.
I know you do.
You know,
it would be insanity to keep him at, what is it, 9.2? What's he owe? 9.1?
Yeah, all you need to know is 9.
Yeah, anything above 5, I think you pass on. It would feel like it would be the definition of a panic move if they kept Dupree just because they were worried about replacing Bud Dupree. Ooh, it's Bud Dupree. I think you can replace 6 sacks a season.
All right, where else from here? The East-West Shrine game's going on. We'll kind of wrap that up in its totality maybe after the weekend, sometime next week and all like that. Speculation continues to build that the Steelers are going to play the Chargers in Mexico. Alex?
Yeah, what was that for 2019? Would that be considered the Steelers road game?
Oh, absolutely. Their lease. It has to be a road game for the Steelers because of their reported lease with Heinz Field. So we already know the list. The NFL already released a list of 5 teams that are going to play the home teams in the international series in 2019. The Chargers, of course, were on that list. I believe Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, the Raiders. I'm missing one other one in there. Oh, the Rams is the other one that are going to host. Now, look, like it or not, Jacksonville is England's team. Mm-hmm. Really, Tampa Bay, I think they have more of a following overseas than they do south of the border. The Rams just had their shot last year to play in Mexico. Obviously, that game against the Chiefs got canceled due to the field conditions there. And the Oakland Raiders played in Mexico in 2016 and again in 2017. So that pretty much leaves the Chargers as the team that's going to play in Mexico this year. So now, at that point, all we have to do is determine who are the Chargers going to play. Well, it's probably not going to be a team in their division. So that rules out half of them right there. It's probably not going to be the Raiders, who obviously is in their division. You go back to 2012, as long as Art Rooney II has talked about how they want to play in Mexico. You start checking all these boxes of things and putting them together. And I've already had a few promoters calling me, ticket package promoters saying they're hearing that this is going to go down. So at this point, and I think we'll find this out during the week of the Super Bowl, if not sooner, the Steelers are going to play in Mexico in 2019 against the Chargers, and that makes a lot of sense from a lot of different viewpoints. And
because the Steelers are one of the most popular teams in Mexico, they always draw a huge crowd. Didn't they play there in – what year did they play there, Dave? Like 2000 or something?
It was, let's see, it was 2000 during the preseason against the Indianapolis Colts on August 19th.
And there was a huge crowd there, so yeah.
87,000.
Yeah, a lot of butts and seats. So Steelers draw a big crowd there, so I think that would make a lot of sense. So I agree. I think you can anticipate, not guarantee, but anticipate Steelers playing south of the border.
All right, what else do we have that we said we wanted to try to knock out quickly on this one?
I think that was everything except for some reader emails, Dave, and I always get nervous when I get a tweet from you at like 11 at night my time about something podcast email related because it's always a question that I am going to be uncomfortable talking about.
All right, let's see here. Let me go back far enough here, make sure I pick up some of these that we missed in the past here.
Because there was one question about you and your personality.
We'll save that. Well, let's go ahead and start off with that. Why? I'll protect the name here. Why is Dave such an asshole? Can you say asshole on a podcast?
Well, it's your show, and I think you just did. So
all right, go ahead. Answer that.
Oh no! You can answer your own questions, Dave.
All right. Look, people already know. In case you don't know, mania bipolar.
Dave is a delight, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not. You don't have to lie. I'm mania bipolar. If you Google that, that will explain a lot of it. Medications do not help when it comes to that. For me, I am also have sleep disorders. On top of it, I am a sufferer of cluster headaches. Google that one as well. And I think if you add a lot of that up, you come up with a personality that I have. It's not justifying it in any way, shape, or form. I admit that I can be tough to deal with, especially for someone like Alex per se, and for people on Twitter. And really, the best thing that sometimes, in general, is just not to engage me. Just read my Twitter feed and don't engage me. If I do, however, lash out at you, do not take it personal. Just say that's old Dave being Dave, and move on from there. So once again, a lot of it has to do with the disorders that I have. I have learned to embrace my disorders as best as I can over the years. A lot of this didn't manifest itself until I quit drinking numerous years ago, but it is what it is. So hopefully, I'm not asking for your love or your sympathy, but just understand kind of that's who I am. All right, fair enough. And you can admit I'm difficult to deal with, right?
Yeah, but no, certainly. But there's a softer side to Dave Ryan that I don't think the Twitter world sees often enough.
Yeah, okay.
I mean that sincerely.
I mean, look, I treat you guys right?
Yeah, hey, I'm still here, right?
Yeah, I think Matthew will say the same thing. I think Daniel. I think all these guys. Dr. Mel. All the I know that the site and this podcast is only as good as the help.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been a fan of that, and I go out of my way to make sure that I keep. I try as best as I can to keep the people that do great job. Look, we've had a lot of people come through Steelers Depot as well too that just haven't cut it for one reason or the others, and I think people that gets lost in it as well too. But on the flip side, I've got we've even added just recently another one kind of to the staff that was going to help us out. Tom Mead is going to help us out with some draft profiles during the off season as well too, and I think people should be excited to read some of what he has coming for us. I think he's going to be at the Senior Bowl along with Daniel as well. So look, I've admitted for a long time that I'm only as good as my help, and I do have good help, and unfortunately I have a personality trait that makes me hard to deal with at times.
All right, Dave, what else we got in these?
All right, Travis Pick writes in, question from Canada. Hey, guys, love the podcast and all the content that you guys put out. What are your thoughts on trading AB for Nick Foles and then trading Ben away for a second or third or something? I know you guys have talked about not blowing it up, but Foles is not signing in Philly this year, and the dude can play. Travis, look, I think it's great what Nick Foles has done in Philly. I think he still has kind of that Alex Smith feel to him, if you will, to a degree. He is going, because of his success over the course of the last 2 years, he is going to cost over the minimum. So that's well over the minimum. He's going to get probably a nice payday from a team maybe such as the Jaguars or Miami, and it's not going to be cheap. And God bless him, he's earned a shot, I think, to be a starting quarterback again in the league. But for this team to trade him. Or trade for him and deal away known commodity in Ben, no, I don't want any part of that world that you're living in.
Yeah, you think there's chaos now? Think about the chaos of trying to trade for Nick Foles, who's going to be a free agent, trading Ben. No, not going to happen.
Okay, moving on. Let's see here. We already hit that one. I'm trying to find a few here that I ought to mark these things red. That would probably help out quite a bit here. Let's go to Ryan Roberts. I am a committed listener. Well, I should be committed as well, too, Ryan. Ryan in Tulsa here. I love the podcast. Never miss an episode. Lifelong Steelers fans, kids, diehards. The way they have managed the organization, their commitment to excellence and success have made it easily to proudly show my allegiance. I was unfortunate enough to play college ball at Oklahoma State with Jason Gilden, which just helped cement my loyalty to the organization. But the last 13 months have been hard. The foolishness with Antonio Brown has been a constant source of conversation for our house and within the Steeler community. What do you do with him? ? I've listened and read the countless reports, predictions, and no one, to my knowledge, has suggested this resolution. Suspend him. Suspend his rear for 6 games. Let him know and the rest of the locker room that this is ridiculous actions and those of Le'Veon Bell, and that not in a way to deal with a first-class organization. If he gets a trade, he wins and the Steelers lose. Period. I can't foresee a trade situation where the Steelers get equal value for a Hall of Fame receiver and take the monetary hit that would entail dealing him, despite his inexcusable decisions. Even if he is a cancer in the locker room, I would rather face a scenario of not having AB for 6 weeks with the hope that he and the rest of the team realizes the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back, than trading him, giving him his way. He is under contract, period. He is a Steeler, and his antics deserve discipline, not reward. And I think I would rather have him on the bench. All right, Ryan, that's a passionate email you got there. And go ahead and start on that, Alex.
Well, I mean, obviously we're not talking about anything game-related right now because it's the off-season, so I don't know what would compel you to bring up the topic of suspending AB now for 6 games. I think the goal is to try to mend this relationship and try to fix it so these things don't happen again. So I think suspending him and going that direction so quickly is not going to – it's not going to fix the relationship. It's only going to burn that bridge forever, and that's going to essentially force your hand at a trade. So that's not the approach I would take. Now, if something happens during the season, maybe you can have a conversation then. But for where things stand right now, it's all about trying to get in touch with AB, trying to talk to him, and kind of getting all these thoughts and frustrations out in the open once and for all. And so you can't go in with that heavy-handed approach of you're going to be suspended for 6 games. Otherwise, basically by saying that, you're saying, we're just going to trade you.
And what's the rules on the old conduct detrimental to the team? Ain't it something like 3 weeks or something? Or what was the whole thing with Miami and Lawrence Timmons? And I don't think you can do it for a period of 6 weeks like that. And look, I mean, you're cheating the team out too. There are a lot of guys that are busting their butt would have to suffer for such a huge punishment as well too. I think if you look, it takes 2 sides too. Antonio Brown's got to want to be a member of this team as well, and merely sitting him down for X amount of games is probably just going to make the whole situation worse. Yes. With him. Unfortunately, judging by this way this guy's acted on social media and all since all this has kind of gone down, to me he's just he thinks he's better than the whole. I mean, his diva-ness is way out there at this point, and mm-hmm. I don't think it's repairable at this point. And yeah, I'm not a fan of letting a player show his butt to the point of getting himself traded out of town, but I mean, what's the alternative here? And I think you do have to, if he's not willing to conform into the things and work this thing out with you, then I think really you're at where Rooney is at this point right now. And I think that is, you have to explore all options outside of cutting him. And unfortunately, that's trading him. And mm-hmm. I mean, I appreciate your what you're saying here, Ryan. But I think you've gotten to the point of no return, really, when it comes to AB. Either you're going to put up with what he is moving forward as part of the reconciliation process, and as I have said, it's going to be okay until the next time it's not okay, or you deal him.
Yeah, you either start with a clean slate with firm guidelines of how things are going to proceed going forward, or you trade him. And my standpoint is it's more likely to be the latter because I think it's very clear at this point AB has no interest in making amends with the team.
All right, Richard Hudspeth writes in, number one, why has been beyond reproach? It seems no matter who it is, everyone has the same stories. I'm not sure I understand that. Number 2, where are we expecting Rudolph to be at the start of next year? At some point, doesn't he have to show that he can be the franchise, if not what's the plan? And number 3, here is a trade that I believe makes sense for everyone. San Francisco's second rounder, which I believe is picked 34, and Marquise Goodwin is about that same body type as AB, but has blazing speed, allowing a lot of the go routes that Ben loves to remain in the system, and he is on a rookie deal. Pittsburgh would effectively have picks. He goes on to list the picks below. Why is Ben beyond reproach? He's your franchise quarterback. I mean, I don't. As long, Kevin Colbert has said as much, as long as Ben wants to play and is playing at a franchise type level, they're not going to do anything with him. And I think it ends right there. I mean, yes, does Ben have the passive aggressiveness and the radio show, and maybe Ben has more control in that locker room than we even know. You're not, Some it is what it is, I guess. I mean, do you have an answer for that?
Well, from the team standpoint, I think the reasons you mentioned. From a media standpoint, I can't speak to other places, but for us, I don't think Ben's ever been above reproach here. I think we've been critical of Ben and comments we didn't like and things that he's got to do better, both on and off the field. I think we've been fair.
Yeah, I mean, Ben's not a top 3 quarterback in the league, right?
Well, no, but I was also talking about off the field and some of the comments and the history that Ben has had, where I felt like we can be critical of some of the things he said on radio shows before, or things that he can do better off the field.
Right, he thinks he deserves the right to be critical in certain areas. I don't think he's gone over. Maybe I shouldn't say never, but I think him going over the top of being critical of some teammates is few and far between. I had no issue with him. Maybe he didn't take as much responsibility for that interception in Denver as he should have.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. I'm just saying we have pointed out some comments Ben has made before that were like, that probably wasn't a good idea to say. He shouldn't have said that.
I think Richard's maybe speaking from the aspect of why is he beyond reproach of not getting rid of him.
Okay.
I don't know.
Like I said, for the reasons you mentioned, because he's Ben and franchise quarterbacks don't grow on trees.
Right. Now, as Richard, to your second part of your question, what are we expecting Rudolph? I think Alex and I touched on this previously. I will be very disappointed, and the franchise should be very disappointed if Rudolph is not the number 2 quarterback come the start of next season. It'll be very, very disappointing if that's not taking anything away from Joshua Dobbs, but college tape and everything that we know about the two, and with them going after Rudolph a year after going after Dobbs, there's no reason to think or no reason not to expect Rudolph to be the number 2.
Yeah, that's the standard. Now, is that going to happen? It's not a guarantee, but that train's going to leave the station soon. So you're looking for him to start working his way up the ladder sooner rather than later.
And about Richard's question about trading AB to San Francisco for a second rounder and Marquise Goodwin. I like Marquise Goodwin. He's a good human too. He is the one, I think, that doesn't he have the sibling that I don't know, cerebral palsy or something like that. I mean, Marquise Goodwin maybe I'm mixing the two, but Marquise Goodwin has a special interest story, either a sibling or a baby or something along those lines, or his wife recently had a miscarriage. Anyway, there was a feature recently done on Marquise Goodwin that really makes you want to stand up and applaud. Yeah, he does have blazing speed. He would be a nice guy to help have on the roster. And doesn't he return kicks and all as well too, Goodwin?
I'm not sure about the kick aspect, but yeah, he's one of the fastest players. He was an Olympic. I think I competed in the Olympics or some of the qualifiers. I know him and his wife, they lost their child, looking at it, I think it was 2 years ago, a little less than 2 years ago. So, yeah, but a really good dude for sure. Now, I think the San Francisco idea is more interesting, probably the most interesting one we've heard in the last couple of emails we've gotten about that, of a high second-round pick, which basically functions as a bottom first-round pick. I'm not so sure about adding the Goodwin part. Maybe you add another pick or something instead, but that would make a lot of sense. I could see San Francisco definitely doing their first second-round pick because they're not trading number 2 overall, but I could see them trading, was that 34 it would be?
Yeah, he says pick 34, so that's like having essentially another first-round pick. So yeah, Richard, just looking at the outline of what you have here, and being I know a little bit about Marquise Goodwin, and he's got. Look at his explosive plays, Alex. Next time you get a chance, he's got quite a few explosive plays, I think, on his resume there. So yeah, I think that's kind of well thought out there, Richard. Let's see, Tim McNichol, dear Dave and Alex. Dave, when you say the Steelers have the ability to toll contracts of Ryan Shazier and Eli Rogers, what exactly does this mean? Especially someone for like Shazier who won't even play on a tolled contract next season. Well, let's not get into the Lord works in mysterious ways, so let's not shut the let's not let's not put a barrier up on Shazier completely. I understand where you're coming. Tolling a contract basically means it redos. And tolled contracts in the sense that we're talking about guys like Eli Rogers and Ryan Shazier. I thought I kind of explained it in a previous podcast. It happens in final years of contracts, particularly when players spend that entire or most of that season on the reserve PUP list. So it has to be in a final year of contract, which it was with both Shazier and Eli Rogers. So, yes, a team has a right to basically say, well, we didn't get that final year out of the player because of this. We would like, we reserve the right to toll his contract again. Now, you obviously would toll it at the next minimum amounts, whatever those would be, and I put that in that post as well, too. We saw the Steelers told the contract of tackle Mike Adams several years ago when he spent the entire his final season of his rookie contract on the reserve PUP list. It is just a stipulation in the in the CBA that gives teams the mechanism to basically have a redo and not allow those players to hit free agency if they were on PUP the entire season. So that's what toll means. Now, especially for someone like Shazier, look, just because the contract tolls, and look, make no mistake about it, they redid his one year deal and turned that into a signing bonus for the sheer fact that they expected his contract to toll, and they didn't want it to toll at an $8 million amount. They wanted it to toll at the minimum. And that's why they did his contract the way that they did last year. A lot of people say, oh, what a great gesture by the Steelers for them to give him that $8 million as a signing bonus. He was going to get that money regardless. But them paying it to him in form of a signing bonus made it a lot simpler to toll his contract at the minimum in 2019 than at $8 million. Do the math. Right. And plus now it gives them time to carry Ryan Shazier throughout the offseason at a low price in case some miracle does happen there. So did I explain that good enough there for Tim, Alex?
Yeah, I think you did a great job. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, contract just carries over.
All right, Jason Campbell writes, love the new segment. I see a lot of people describe Tomlin as arrogant. I personally don't think that, because he uses big words that many users don't understand. What are your thoughts on this? Thanks, Jason Campbell. I like anybody else, I think Tomlin can be kind of arrogant, especially with the media at times, and that's really the only setting that we see him in is his dealings with the media. I think people just, I said this at the top of the show. I think some people are just done, wash their hands with Tomlin, and they'll look at any chance right now to discredit and diminish him in hopes that it cost him his job moving forward. I think Mike Tomlin is very even keel, though. I think he's hard to ruffle his feathers over the years. He does use big words, but I have no problem with a person being well read and well studied. Something I am not.
I think every head coach has to be arrogant to some degree. You're leading an entire organization. You're leading, an entire roster of players, an entire staff of coaches, and, addressing the media. So I think every coach to some degree, has that level of arrogancy to them. But I've never gotten the impression that, Tomlin is holier than thou. I know some people who don't like him will probably strongly disagree with that, but I think there's a line that you have to walk, and I think Tomlin walks pretty well from what I can tell. I can't answer that question the best because I don't personally know him or anything, but I think that he's always done a good job of keeping himself in check, and I think his personality meshes well with that locker room.
All right, Jim Bendis writes, and Dave, you made some good points on why the Steelers will not tender Bell. I can't argue with the points. However, there is one possibility motive why the Steelers may want to tender Bell. He says basically they don't believe they will get a third-round comp pick for him since they did not want one last year. Don't expect one this. Wait a minute. Basically, they don't believe they will get a third-round comp pick since they did not want one last year. Don't expect one this year, and I may not believe they will get one next year for whatever reason. I'm not understanding that you're following there, Jim, but I'll read the rest of your question here. So why not spin the wheel to see what happens? Worst case, you would not get a pick, which you think you would not get one anyway. So what do you have to lose? I'm not sure I get the first point. They did not believe they would get a third-round comp pick last year. Look, they they tagged him. So they tagged him with the idea that they were going to be able to at least have him on that tag for a year. And in the story, it's not that they did not think that they were going to get a third-round comp pick last year. They tagged him because they wanted the player and because they thought they would have him and be able to sign him to a long-year extension. That's what happened last year and the year before that. It had nothing to do with not letting him explore free agency because of the comp pick scenario. So I'm not. Do you understand the point he's trying to make there, Alex, or no?
Not really. I'm sorry. I don't.
Maybe you can rewrite me, Jim, and try to explain why you don't think why they believe they would not. And as far as this year and letting him walk, you have to look at it as compensatory draft pick value, not the actual pick, because obviously what happens during free agency with the net add on your end versus the net loss for whatever free agents you lose is how the formula goes. So I don't think you look at it as a slam dunk third round comp pick. You look at it as that being part of the formula, the value that you get for losing him. Now, obviously, if you go out there and like Alex has suggested, you go out there and you make a big splash and sign an edge rusher or an inside linebacker or somebody that's high dollar value in free agency, well, and you let Le'Veon Bell walk off to a team and they sign him to a big deal. Obviously, those two deals are going to cancel each other out. So now I guess what you're getting at is if you go into this thinking, well, that's our plan anyway, is to be heavy in free agency. So whatever value we would get in losing Le'Veon Bell, we can live with, and thus we're not counting on the compensatory formula. Why not go ahead and transition tag him and at least give us an opportunity to have the end-all, do-all say that whether or not he leaves or not, give us an opportunity to match the contract that way. Maybe that's the way Jim's trying to frame this thing. And if so, okay. I mean, I get that. But really, what are the odds that you're going to match the contract?
Yeah, I don't think they're very high. Dave, I know the comp formula is super tricky to figure out, but is it a guarantee that they would cancel out? Because let's say Bell gets his $15 million per year, which I think is very, very possible. Let's say the Steelers only sign somebody for $7 to $8 million per year. Is that definitely going to cancel out?
You're asking. I'd have to go back and look at.
Could it turn into like you get a fifth round value out of it when you factor everything in?
Ask that. Go look at some of them charts and ask that Norte or whatever. Yeah. Nick Forte, whatever his name is. He's because look, the Steelers don't even know how this comp formula works. You know. And I tell you, some team might want to hire that guy, Corte or whatever, to in the front office to handle that end of it because he's pretty damn spot on. as far as figuring out what the comp picks are going to be. I don't think you go into any of this thinking of what may or may not the value.
Sure.
The comp value might be, though. I think that's that's a wrong way of looking at it.
And even though I want the Steelers to be aggressive in free agency, and I think that they will be aggressive in free agency, there's no guarantee either. Maybe you don't get the guy, or maybe you get a cheaper guy because you couldn't get the top level guy. So there's still a chance, even making some moves in free agency, you don't make the moves that you want to make, and so you get that comp value as kind of a consolation prize.
All right, Sam Schreiber writes in, assuming Bell is gone, what are your thoughts on Adrian Peterson as a potential replacement for Stephen Ridley? Yes, he is on the wrong side of 30, but so was D'Angelo Williams. When he was signed by the Steelers, a combination of Connor, Peterson, and Samuels sounds like a solid committee of backs for next year. No, thank you. Unless you decide that Peterson's going to be your guy and he's willing to be your guy for damn near the minimum, no, thank you.
Well, my first thought was to say no outright, but the Steelers were going to sign him 2 years ago. That's what AP said. He was going to sign with Pittsburgh until, Washington, I guess, came along. So I'm not going to totally discount it.
He wasn't a big fan of being in that committee in New Orleans.
Well, he's going to have to be in a committee no matter where he goes. If he wants to play again, he's not the lead dog anymore. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, look, he had a surprising 2018 season. I will give him that, but no, thank you. Danny Bro writes in, hi, my name is Daniel Zolak. Thank God he put the phonetic spelling in that. Just started listening to the podcast. Love you guys, but questions are not stupid ones like trade AB for Derwin James. Really, laugh out loud. We get all kind, Danny. Do you think that our young DBs will develop into starters or have bigger roles such as Brian Allen, Cameron Sutton, Ola Adeniyi, and Marcus Allen? Number two, do you know of any coach that can take Mike Munchak's spot? Do you think Mason Rudolph can develop into something? All right, number two, about any coach that can take Mike Munchak's spot. We already hit at the top of the show about Shaun Sarrett. End of discussion. We'll see what happens there. Do you think Mason Rudolph can develop into something? We'll see. I mean, all we have to go on is just some snaps during preseason right now in this college tape. I'd be interested. Look, nobody's going to look more forward to watching Mason Rudolph play during the 2019 preseason than probably me. So, because I watched so much of his college tape, I think there is something there. Whether or not we'll see it during his time in Pittsburgh depends on what happens with Ben Roethlisberger. But I think he can become at least a competent backup. How's that from what I know now? And as far as the first question, Alex, I'll let you answer this one. Do you think our young DBs will develop into starters or have bigger roles such as Cameron Allen, Cameron Sutton, and I guess he meant to add linebackers in there because Ola Adeniyi is a linebacker there, and Marcus Allen?
Yeah, it's a big year for Sutton going into year 3. I think they wanted to give him more opportunities last year in the slot. I've always profiled him as more of an outside corner. He's played both in Pittsburgh. I kind of seem to like him more in the slot. I'd rather they play more on the outside. Now maybe with the right cornerback spot being pretty open coming into next year, maybe they give him that chance. But certainly a big year for Sutton. I think I've liked how he's played overall. We'll see. I can't promise anything. Brian Allen, I think he pretty much is what he is at this point, kind of a reserve guy, a good special teamer. I'm not really convinced at all that we're going to see starter material there. Marcus Allen, I think I look at what I thought of him coming out as a potential hybrid, dime kind of guy. Steelers might play a lot of the 3-3-5 next year. Maybe Allen has some sort of role there. And Adeniyi, I think he can be a good pass rusher. But it's based off of a relatively limited sample size. So I think the best thing for Adeniyi in 2019 is to come in, compete to be the number 3, to kind of play in that chick role. The issue with Adeniyi playing the Chicolo role is, though, Chicolo is a big special teams guy, and Adeniyi is not really an asset there. So that's going to be the thing that's always going to hinder him, is trying to climb the ladder but not being a competent special teams player. So that's going to be a tricky needle for him to thread.
All right, one last one. JJ, I'm sure you're tired of AB questions, but he is our hot topic. With all the word that he wants to play for the 49ers, if you were the GM of Pittsburgh, what would you take for you to send him on his way? Geez, here we go, more speculation. My thought was to give up AB and our first for their first, second overall, and a third then I would trade back and stockpile picks. Anyway, just wanted your opinion on it. Look, it's hard to speculate on this, JJ. I mean, we could throw out so many scenarios here with the trade chart and all, and we could be wrong on every last one of them. I know it's fun to speculate. It's part of, covering the team and talking about the team and doing what we do. I will say this to part of your email that I was thinking about the most last night. If the Steelers somehow did get that second-round pick out of San Francisco, I would try to turn that into a few more picks. I don't think I would stay at number 2. I think I'd be willing to go down 3 or 4 more spots for whatever, to stockpile a few more. Alex?
Yeah. Again, the speculation. I mean, we're going to do this so much, it's going to get a little tiresome. I understand your point, though. It's really tough to try to peg any sort of trade because what's going to make sense? What are other teams going to offer? We've been down that rabbit hole so much. It's kind of become white noise to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's so hard to speculate there. All right, I think we got a few more in there, but we've as usual we've run long here. So we'll wrap it up until Friday, and we'll. It sounds like maybe by Friday, Alex, the bat signal will have gone up for Art Rooney II. So maybe we'll have some things to talk about what he told the media in his end of the season sit down, so to speak. We'll see. I'm sure there'll be something else to talk about with this damn team between now and Friday. We'll obviously preview the conference championship games on Friday and give you our picks on those as well too. So if I hurt your feelings recently, I apologize. I apologize for being me. If I blocked you on Twitter and you feel I've done so unfairly, send me an email to theterriblepodcast@gmail.com and we'll see if we cannot work something out and be friends again. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you feel sorry for Alex for having to work with me and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit that donate button, upright navigational bar. For those of you who have donated in the past and continue to donate, thank you. That's all I can say on that. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.